What is up, everybody? Mark on the mic, my good friend Ryan Muckenhirn across from me. And today we're talking about the Thompson Center Encore, which in the year 2025 is amidst its encore.
But tis.
I mean, this thing is making a comeback, Ryan.
I'm happy about it.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Back in the day, we're going to be talking, what would I say, like early 2000s time frame. When did these things come out?
You know, I'd have to look back at when the introduction of the Encore itself was, because there's been a number of TC single shots over the years.
Right.
Very similar, some radical departures in guns like the TC-83, but like the Contender G2, and the Encore follow some similar veins. When the Encore was released, I can't give you the exact year. Your timeline, though, where you're talking about that early 2000s when they got hot.
Hot. I mean, so this was a time period which I would say the height, the heyday of outdoor television. We're talking Sportsman Channel, Outdoor Channel. I'm not sure there was a hunting TV show that wasn't using / promoting Thompson Center. It was everywhere. To the point where, you know, I mean, that's a time also when that was major outdoor media. These people were the influencers of the time. Now, I never ultimately bought one of these rifles, but I definitely used a few and was like, what am I missing? Everybody's gone, like, in my mind, I'm like, everybody's gone to single shot rifles. What's so special about these single shot rifles? And there are some cool things about them.
Very.
Let's talk about some of those cool things.
Yeah. So this is actually like a second gen Encore. This is a Pro Hunter.
Mm-hmm.
There would have been a just standard Encore before that. And then there was even some other Encores that were different than regular Encores. But this embodies kind of exactly what we're looking at here. So what the devil is a TC Encore? Well, it's one of the finer American-made single shots on the market. It is a very scalable firearm. It's a system. It's not just a rifle. It is a rifle, a shotgun, a muzzleloader, a pistol, depending on how you configure it. So modular system, made novel by its receiver style and then its ability to swap barrels. So this is different than a lot of other single shot contemporaries on the market. So we'll pick on one. We'll say the Ruger No. 1. Okay, so that uses a threaded and shouldered barrel that screws into a receiver that has a falling block mechanism that you could change the caliber on if you wanted to, and fairly easy, but there's going to be like a gunsmith cost incursion. The Contender G2, and the Encore brought to the American shooter and consumer the ability to rapidly reconfigure the system at home with simple tools. In fact, as little as a flat screwdriver, just to take the forend off via the screws that hang onto it.
I mean, it's the two screws on the forend,
yep,
and then that's going to expose essentially a pin that you tap out.
Yep.
Grab your new barrel, affix the forend, tap the pins back in, affix the forend, and you're kind of off to the races with an entirely new cartridge / system. Yeah, you could go from centerfire rifle to shotgun to muzzleloader, all with the same, I guess,
receiver.
Yeah. And so a lot of modularity there, a lot of versatility. And you're going to save some money along the way. It's certainly it's not, I wouldn't say it's inexpensive to get a new barrel.
No,
but it's lesser than a new complete rifle.
Yeah. So at the time when I was selling these things, I got bit by the Encore bug.
You did?
I did. I got bit by it. I had these illusions or delusions, I suppose, depends on who you talk to, that I would have a frame, several stocks, many barrels of different cartridges and lengths and configurations, and I would tailor them to my needs as I saw fit. And I didn't know what I don't know now, so things were a little bit different. And one thing that I was at the time I was very barrel and frame rich, very scope poor.
Okay.
And I was not privy to kind of the understandings of the like things like fore-end tension and what it does to your point of impact. And when you disassemble the system and reassemble the system, what that does to your point of impact. These are things that I had not been learned or schooled on yet. And what I found was that anytime I would reconfigure the gun, even if I just cleaned it, like took the fore-end off, put the fore-end back on, because I didn't have torque tools and I wasn't smart enough to understand these things, effectively I had to go re-zero the gun.
Right.
So it lacked a lot of the convenience that I thought it would have.
That's what I've always wondered is the idea of this, this versatility, and I can have any cartridge under the sun with one rifle, but in practice, does it actually pan out? Now, I will say one thing that TC says, because the optic is mounted to the barrel, and apparently that, they come back together with precision, they say it doesn't really require re-zeroing, from what I understand.
Kind of.
I mean, that's where I would land too.
What you end up with. So that's a true statement, right? So here's a great contrast.
And I think there's truth to it too.
Yeah, very, very much so. The screw tension on the fore-end, applying a differential of pressure or pull down in that barrel, influences like the rate of frequency at which it reverberates.
Sure.
So like adding a barrel tuner or removing a barrel tuner or transient fore-end pressure, whatever, you end up with a different result. And it took me a while of goofing with my Encores because I had several of them to kind of figure this out. And ultimately what I did is like I had barrels, multiple, and then a frame. And then I realized like, okay, one, I'm going to keep the same every time. And like that gun will just be that gun and it'll stay that way. And others I might futz with and goof around with and then kind of figured out how to do it and how to do it right. And they really are cool. I think they're really attractive and their mechanisms are intuitive and their ergonomics and geometry are nice and they work really good. And when you get them dialed and you get them to where you want them and all the bits and bobs put together correctly, they're famously accurate. And so I really enjoyed having them. And I think I got rid of them for, I guess now, I was poor and like a tank of gas might be my largest expenditure on the month. I think I gave one or sold one to my buddy who then sold it to fund a mule deer or a pronghorn hunt. I can't remember which.
It's a worthy cause.
I think I traded another one for a Glock 26, which I still have. Carried that gun for many years. So I think I came out okay on that one. And the other I just sold as a frame, and then I piecemealed all my barrels out and sold those as pieces, to pay for gas or beers or tags or something. But I miss them. So after I got rid of them, some time passed, and I thought, dang it, I liked them. I liked the simplicity that they offered. I loved the concept of them. I loved the ergonomics of them, and I loved just hunting with them. They were a lot of fun. And once they were gone, because they'd fallen off the marketplace for now many years.
Well, so Smith & Wesson bought them.
They did.
I think sold them, produced them for a short while, and then essentially, shelved them.
Yeah. And then they were gone. And what was really sad is like they hyper inflated in value. So then I had like two levels of remorse. Remorse because I didn't have one. Remorse because I didn't have one to sell for like an absurd amount of profit compared to what they sold for.
Well, and then if you're like, well, I want to get into one of those again, you're like, well, cripes.
Yeah.
Now they're actually
expensive. Their frames. I mean, frames were selling for almost $1,000, and frames at I think the last frame I bought was $299 for a stainless version with a stock and fore-end.
Wow.
Yeah, and I bought that up in Fargo, North Dakota, and that was. That was the last frame I bought. It was $299. And so, yeah, they were selling for $1,000 or near for just a frame. What I think is really cool about them, though, and this is something like speak to that design intent and the utility is they offered you the ability to make a world-class muzzleloader.
Yes.
That was spectacularly capable. And you're not likely to use that muzzleloader barrel all the time. And then give yourself like a world-class turkey gun, and then a world-class centerfire solution. And I really, really wanted one particular model to have in the centerfire package. I never bought it. It was called I'm going to pronounce this wrong. It's a mountain range in the Northeast, the Katahdin.
I don't remember that one.
So it was much like this. It was a short-barreled system, and there were 4 offerings: 460 Smith & Wesson, 500 Smith & Wesson, 4570 Government, and then a short muzzleloader. So it would have been the kind of upscale version of my, rest in peace, TC X7 Omega. And that was kind of an aspirational model for me to get. And then they were gone, and it was too late, and I never did it because I like that short little muzzleloader, little handy thing. And I had a regular Encore muzzleloader, actually with a couple of barrels, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was a great gun. They were more expensive than the Omegas, and I had a couple of Omegas at the same time. I wouldn't say that the Encore shot necessarily better. They were certainly an easier gun to work with from the cleaning perspective. Not that an Omega is a hard gun to work with, take the breech plug out and clean it. But the Encore was a more kind of a buttoned up system. And they, I think, offered you kind of a little bit more of an upscale solution.
I mean, one thing that I think is cool is because of the receiver design. They come with, I want to say, a 28-inch barrel.
Yeah.
And, like kind of their stock versions which is pretty long
barrel.
rifle barrel.
You bet.
But if a person wanted to, case in point, this one that we have in front of us, put a different barrel on, have your barrel cut down, you can get an extremely short package, but still maintain reasonable barrel length, 16-inch barrel or an 18-inch barrel. I think this is probably an 18.
Yeah. This is Tim's 6.5 Creedmoor, and Mark did the old finger measurement thing, and I think you're spot on, 18.
But this is a very compact, ergonomic, easy to wield package, and so you're able to take off that barrel length, but not necessarily sacrifice overall barrel length and velocity.
Yeah, when you were to look at a 28-inch Pro Hunter,
or I guess make as big a concession.
Correct. Yeah, when you were to look at a 28-inch Pro Hunter, it was not longer. It didn't seem much longer than, say, a 22-inch Remington 700. Because to your point, when we look at what is the receiver, well, it's about a half an inch long versus your 700 long action receiver, which is 5 inches long. So you're saving all that space there, and you get this delightfully compact little package. And I can't. At a first glance, they look a little gothic. Like they've got some like batwing geometry on them.
Maybe that's why I'm into it.
That could be. But they really are a neat, kind of pretty little gun. The Pro Hunter especially brought some nice upgrades to the table over the standard. One of them was the swing hammer. So prior to that, they had just a very, if you examine an exposed hammer on, I'm just going to pick a gun, Marlin 336. It is a hammer. You reach up and you grab it with your thumb. Well, most of these guns were fired with optics, and one of the things that the end user had to do to make that a functional thing is either raise the optics high, or you'd put a hammer extension on that kicked a 90-degree landing pad off for your thumb, from like Uncle Mike's, for instance. And they're fine. The swing hammer, though, was a brilliant design. So little Allen key on the top there, you can move the hammer around, left or right-handed, so that it just kicks off just to the side enough for you to get your thumb on and cock it back without interfering with the optic. Very tasteful and intelligent design element in that system.
I mean, a very small thing that ends up being a pretty big thing.
Big deal.
And you're talking about left or right-handed shooters. This is a pretty easy system to fit either.
Totally ergonomic package with the standard stocks. They also were very famous for having thumb hole options.
Mm-hmm.
And So if you got this version, this is the neutral cast, totally ambi model. Whether you were left or right-handed, it wouldn't matter. Okay, you manipulate the hammer to whatever side suits you best. The controls are totally ambidextrous. The stock wrist design is totally ambidextrous. There is no cast in the stock, so it is neutral from that perspective. And then as Mark just opened the action, by just simply squeezing the trigger guard, it hinges open, and we're good to go. And then, like I said, very intelligent, very simplistic design, very few moving parts. And at a point, the aftermarket for them was nuts. I mean, barrel manufacturers, different stocks, different bases, different means to attach forends. There were some upgrades there that utilized the hanger bar as opposed to the two kind of threaded studs that either were dovetailed or welded to the barrel. And some really neat stuff that had come out for them. And I got down a rabbit hole of performance muzzleloader upgrades that I can tell you for sure did not make a difference. But maybe it did. But the theory was sound. The execution was poor. The guns are cool though. And when I learned that they were actually coming back, because there's been rumors of this for several years, either a completely different company was going to resurrect the receiver under a completely different name, and we'd get the bones or the skeletal structure of the system back, and we could build off of it, or TC was going to reappear and re-release the Encore.
Rise from the ashes.
Yeah. And what's really neat is that TC has made a ton of really cool guns over the years. And from like traditional Hawken style rifles, or close to traditional, if there's a Hawken purist out there that's just about ready to, close to consumer available Hawken style rifles, to a very classy gun, the TCR and TC-83 was neat rigs. Some actually spectacular bolt rifles. They had a rifle called the Icon for a short bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very luxe gun. In fact, the first 6.5 Creedmoor I ever sold was a TC Icon.
Really?
Yep, a TC Icon weather shield specifically.
Okay, time out. Because, that can't be. Because the first production I thought the Savage, Weather Warrior.
Could have been. First one I ever sold
was a TC Icon.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. And they had, remember the wood version of that? They had that really fancy bolt handle. They always came with just deluxe wood. I mean, absolutely deluxe. Hold on here.
Yeah, let's bring up a picture here. I did use a few TCs over the years, or Encores. One of which, again, this was back.
This was an Icon.
Oh yeah, that is nice.
So they were a classy gun. So yeah, I had 30 TC and a 6.5 Creedmoor in the shop, and this is an example here of the weather shield. So stainless with a Hogue stock on it, and they had a kind of a bolt or butter knife bolt handle, kind of a throwback to the Mannlicher Schonauers that I'm so enamored with, and then they also had a round bolt knob option. But they were a cool, very novel action at the time. I mean, very few guns employed what they did. They were a fat bolt, so they had that what we now see on a lot of budget rifles, that singular diameter bolt and lug style. Very, very cool guns. And then they've had some great affordable options too, like the Venture, which is a kind of a more economic version of the Icon, sort of. And then the Compass, which is like an extremely affordable option, like $299. All were renowned for spectacular accuracy. And then they had like their Omega line of muzzleloaders, and then several other muzzleloaders that followed the Omega's demise. And they took the place of that.
I still think the Omega was a standout.
It was. Yeah, it really was. What defined them, though, and this is a personal opinion, defined them as a rifle company was actually the Encore and Contender series.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. The Contender being the pistol version, I guess. Yes?
Baby brother. No. So the Contender isn't necessarily a pistol. Contender,
I guess it can't.
Yeah. A Contender can be a carbine. A Contender can be a pistol. I would say over the years, I've seen far more Contenders, and especially the G1 Contenders, as pistols. And I think that's where they really, really got popular, is like with like formal pistol silhouette competition and pistol competitions in general. And then
there's guys that, want to go shoot prairie dogs with pistols.
Yeah, absolutely. And the contenders, contender carbine, contender pistol, whatever. And then the contender G2, which is really like a scaled down Encore. Or maybe an Encore is a scaled up G2, but a second gen contender that got rid of some of the nuances of regular contenders, modernized them for certain. That those three systems, and really we'll just say encompassing the Thompson Center single shot rifles and their ability to be scaled any which way you want them. That's what defines TC to me. When I think about their weapon systems and platforms. And yeah, it was an absolute shame to see him go. It is an absolute delight to see him back.
I think it's going to be neat to watch. I've been kind of keeping my eye on the story unfolding. Like I said, I used a couple over the years. I will say this was back early in my, like I said, early 2000s time frame. And very influenced, like I said, by outdoor television. And I'd come to the conclusion that I couldn't kill turkeys with my Browning A500.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't camouflage.
I understand.
Even though I had been killing turkeys with my Browning A500 that wasn't camouflage. So we had a Thompson Center single shot 12 gauge. I want to say it was in Realtree hardwoods.
Naturally.
I'm like 98%.
Hardwoods 2200 probably.
Could have been. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I took it out and I fired one 3-inch turkey load from it. And I said, you know what?
That A500 is fine.
That A500 is working just fine. I think I'll go back to that one. I mean, it
rocked your world.
It stopped me a little bit.
Oh yeah.
The difference was noticeable.
Yeah. I fancied a 20 gauge Pro Hunter.
That'd probably be a little bit more palatable.
Yeah. I fancied a 20 gauge Pro. Never bought it.
And
I wish I knew it was Katahdin, however you say that word, and forgive me for not knowing.
Maybe one of the listeners can phonetically put it in the comments.
I hope that the 6 iterations that I attempted were not even close to correct. But,
the critter that I did shoot with an Encore was my biggest antelope to date at a range of, I want to say, 300 yards.
What was the caliber?
270 Winchester.
No kidding.
Another gun that I borrowed from Cabela's. It was the one time that I did the Cabela's Outfitter Journal TV show, Wyoming Antelope Hunt.
Where were you? Just break it into quadrants.
Central
Wyoming. Okay, I know where you were.
But, I don't know.
It worked.
Worked like a charm.
Yeah.
Yeah, made a good shot. Like I said, about 300 yards, and bullet hit the antelope in the heart, and off we went.
Backstraps it was.
Backstraps it was. So, pretty cool. Here's one thing here's what I'm worried about.
I'm listening.
Times have changed a little bit.
They have.
Right?
Yep.
Like, it's been a while since this came out. We have a sea of economically priced bolt-action rifles that deliver oftentimes exceptional accuracy for not very much monies. They don't have the modularity,
correct,
we'll say. In the same breath though, Ryan, another popular thing these days is like a Rimage type.
Sure.
Wherein I guess you don't have the scope mounted to the barrel with that type of system, so maybe you don't have the repeatability, but you certainly have the ability to pretty darn quickly swap out to a different cartridge.
I agree. I don't think people are doing that as often as maybe one could. Meaning, I don't think most people are buying any kind of proper action vise. Not everybody is. I mean, some people are, but not everybody is. And I just don't think that concept hooked up for the same reasons as the Encore. I think that it hooked up because it's super convenient and an affordable way to Correct.
build a gun.
I think most of those guns get built and they never get unbuilt.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Whereas with the Encore users, I think more people were apt to reconfigure and modify. And I know where you're going, and I agree, but I also disagree because there's this thing in the gun industry that I have observed in many forms, and that is there is an established user base that kind of generates this occult level love for a system. And like there is still a large contingency of original contender shooters. And the sale price of those barrels and forends and stocks is still high. And in weird cartridges that TC made over the years, or that outfits like MGM or Bell or other barrel companies that made barrels for Encores and contenders set up. And I think that with this revitalization, there's likely to be a bunch of people who have been waiting with bated breath for that to happen so that they can get back on the train, continue adding to their collection, or if they're like me and they forgot to do it in the first place, or not forgot, but just set it to the wayside, they're going to jump on it. Because if they bring back the Katadin,
the katana,
I'm buying one for sure. I don't need another muzzleloader. That's a guaranteed. Oh, here we go. Ryan got the phonetical pronunciation of Katahdin. So it is Katahdin, according to Google. Mount Katahdin.
Katahdin. Oh, named after a mountain. That's cool.
Yeah.
Where's the mountain? Can you read that? Maine. Oh, Maine. Okay. Now, Ryan, this information is from Thompson Center, from their Facebook page. That's social media. 2025 Encore caliber offerings. And this is one thing that I think is pretty cool. 22 ARC, 204 Ruger. Don't hear that one too often anymore.
Still there.
223 Remington, 22 250, 243 65 Creedmoor, 270 Winchester, 7 Meg, 300 Blackout, 30-06 Springfield, 300 Win, 350 Legend, makes sense. 35 Whalen, makes sense. 360 Buckhammer, makes sense. 400 Legend, 450 Bushmaster, a lot of straight walls in there. 4570 Government, that one doesn't really make sense.
Get out.
And 460 S&W Magnum.
Yeah.
But that's not all. You get the juicer. And then, of course, we have...
I am so glad that you are who you are.
Thank you. Oh, if there's anything I'm a sucker for, it's a good infomercial. I'll watch those things for hours. 45 Colt.
No kidding.
Okay, hold on. 45 Colt /410.
Okay. Yep. Pistol.
Okay. Yeah. Never mind. These are the Encore offerings. That makes sense. Oh, wait. No, I thought. Never mind. Okay. Of course, it's the Encore. That's what we're talking about. 410, 20 gauge, 12 gauge, 20 gauge rifled slug, 12 gauge rifled slug, 45 caliber muzzleloader, and 50 caliber muzzleloader. Which, boy, I tell you what, I think that's what a lot of folks are going to get these for.
Yeah, they're very conducive to muzzleloading and rimmed cartridges. And here's why. I just want to show you this. This is an infomercial here. Are you tired of fumbling your 209 primers into your drop breech mechanisms? Got to fish it underneath the scope. Check this out. It hinges open. You got this big open space. Click. Done. Back at it. Now you got to do the rest of the loading process, which in itself takes probably a minute. But yeah, they're super conducive for use with a muzzleloader or a straight, like a rimmed cartridge, 4570, for instance.
Now, from a competitor perspective, where I think they could have some upstream rowing, is CVA has done some pretty serious work over the last few years, filling this space and more with some very solid muzzleloaders and single-shot rifles and bolt-action rifles. Would you, like, am I on the right track if I was going to say, like, who's your direct competitor?
1,000%.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. And I think so. And that there will have to be some delineations between the two models to really stand out, I suppose. And one thing I like with the pro hunters that they're doing is threaded barrels now. They're shortening the lengths because they're thinking ahead. People using muzzle brakes or suppressors on there, not wanting this gargantuan setup. Very attractively done, and they're still, so far as we know, sourcing great barrel steel. And yep, they're modernized, and not that CVA isn't doing that, but they're putting a darn good foot forward with that. And they're also, again, TC was an extraordinarily trusted name in the muzzleloading community. And at a time, like, I sold the depth and breadth of muzzleloaders. I sold everything from, on the very budget end, Traditions, and then CVA, and then TC and Knight. And at a time, Austin and Halleck made the fanciest muzzleloader that you could buy. And TC was like the one. It truly was the one. I had a wall at the shop that I worked at, and it was probably as big as this. All it was Encore barrels and fore ends. So if I had a shooter come in and said, "Hey, I want an Encore barrel for prairie dog shoot." Oh yeah, here's 223, here's 22 250, here's 204. I want a muzzleloader. Here's that. You want 45? You want 50? I want whatever. It was all there.
I mean, I agree, and I'm not trying to throw shade in any way. I agree at the time, right? Yeah. But some time has passed.
It has.
I mean, my current muzzleloader is a CVA now.
Same. I've got several. Yep.
It's phenomenal, and I guess where I wonder, like, it's like they've moved forward, I would say, and then is this coming out? From what I hear, I think it's going to be very much the same, but better. Like, I think they're refining, production and things like that. So I think it actually will be a better rifle. But is it different enough from, I guess, the forward movement that, say, like a CVA has made? Are they?
I don't know that they have to
stuck
be
in the past.
No, I wouldn't say that. I don't know that they have to be different enough, just because of what weight they carried at the time and how people just loved them. My frustrations with the Encore were just due to my lack of understanding of what I needed to do to make them do everything I wanted them to do. And that I found myself configuring guns and leaving them configured. And I'm like one person. I had customers back in the day that they had many barrels, like dozen plus barrels for their Encore. And that was like the thing that they used. They loved it. If they hunted in the southern part of the state during the firearm season, or we'll say muzzleloader season, they had an Encore muzzleloader. If they went up north of Minnesota and they could hunt with a rifle, they had a rifle barrel for it. And they had a shotgun barrel for killing turkeys. And I mean, just all kinds of crazy stuff. People just were nuts about them. And I still think that those people are nuts about them. And I still think they're going to continue buying them. And I think there's a whole slew of folks that are going to usher themselves into it. And much like, I'm trying to find an automotive example. It's like the Mustang. The Mustang has changed over the years, right? More horsepower, different ground effects. Largely, the format has been unchanged since the early 2000s. When you look at it, like, it's very identifiable as a Mustang. And people still buy them. There are better cars for the money that can go nearly as fast. But there's
but I've always wanted
a Mustang or a Corvette. And don't get Jim talking about Corvettes, because I think Corvettes are cool, especially the new rear engines. He's like, you are such a clown.
I was always a fan. I want to say it was the 83. It's the one that's kind of shaped. It's got that. I'd say it's got like a maybe kind of like a Ferrari Testarossa vibe to it.
Hello, Mark. Sure. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Very like a wave.
But like, this is a great example. Are there better cars for similar or even potentially less money that are more driver friendly, that aren't as costly to insure, that don't cost as much to maintain, that don't cost as much to put new tires on, because you're buying two different sizes of tire, one for the rears and one for the front? Yeah, but people still buy Corvettes and Mustangs.
Because your entire life, you've wanted one.
Yes.
And then you finally have enough coins saved up that you can do it. You're old enough that it's either now or never. Man, you make that purchase, comb that hair over, put your gold chain on, unbutton that shirt a couple buttons, and hit the open
Is that
road.
what you're doing?
Maybe. Not too far off.
Yeah, are you 40 yet?
Close.
Okay.
Boy, speaking of cars, in some ways, I think a parallel, but in a lot of ways, the opposite. The International Scout. There's like this new Scout, but they like, instead of like coming out, it's like, it's ruined in my opinion. Like,
It's an EV.
Waited all these years for them to make the comeback, and it's like, really? That's okay. Oh, side point.
That's a heartbreaking deal.
It really was.
You should.
I was so excited.
You should get
I was
that
like,
thing,
yes, no.
Hey, you should get that thing trucked out here. All you got to do is just like leave it at Jim's house.
Jim said I could keep it at his place.
And you know what'll
I even
happen?
have a place to store it.
You know what'll happen? He'll be looking at it and be like, "God dang it, Mark, why'd you leave that here? What's going on under the hood on this thing anyways?" God dang it, he's got the distributor cap needs to be replaced.
That would actually be my hope, that he couldn't help letting it sit. Like
Yeah,
that it would bother him.
1000%.
And then he'd just call me up. He's like, get over here. Your car's done.
Yeah. And see, like nothing that I would ever own would ever pique his interest like that. But you know how it was. He'd walk by it like that Scout for like 2 weeks, maybe tops. I hope he listens to this because he's going to be like, "Were you guys talking about me without me there?"
Yeah.
And he would. He'd just, Mark, redo the interior.
He'd be like, he's never going to do this.
Yeah, correct. He can't leave well enough alone. He starts scratching that sticker. He's going to be scouring junkyards all over the United States of America looking for parts.
I'm just going to drop it off. Jim, I got a new hobby for you.
Right.
The TC Encore.
I'm glad it's coming back.
I'm glad it's coming. Now, here's the other thing, though, and I was poking around, Ryan, on the old interweb.
Well,
And it's, like these, it's back. But I was like Google searching like new TC Encore for sale. And at least personally, I wasn't having stuff pop up at like retailers that I would think would carry it.
I haven't looked.
Okay.
This reminds me a little bit of the Marlin.
So, and I'm not saying, because like some people were like, hey, it was like, I was seeing stuff like, available at like, kind of select dealers. So maybe they are out there.
Yep.
So I guess more of a talking point. I'm not saying emphatically either way.
It's very new announcement though.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is reminiscent of me of the Ruger owned Marlin 1895 reintroduction. That was big news. And
Okay.
so the 1895 is coming back under Ruger's ownership. And there was trepidation, but then I touched one, and it is without question the best Marlin that's ever been produced. And forever they were impossible to find. They're still hard to get because demand is high, production is limited, which is good. They put a lot of attention to detail into that system. My hope is the same.
I think so. And it's not, I was watching some videos that they were putting out, and it certainly doesn't sound as simple as just flipping the lights on and hitting the go button, blowing the dust off the TC machine and say, let's make more of these. Like they really, for all intents and purposes, essentially bought the IP back. They got some stuff, some of the machining equipment, but, even respinning back up their dealer network, and a little bit of a start from scratch. But like I said, in what I was hearing, definitely a revamping, and overall, it sounds like what will ultimately be a better product than its predecessor.
I'm excited.
Yeah, like I said, it'll be interesting to watch. It'll be interesting to see the reception as time goes on. If we see a resurgence in single shot rifles and
I'm here for that.
Customization, like you said, in some ways, like you think of how like customizable an AR is. Like these things were kind of like had that vibe. You could get a different stock. You could get a different like. It's pretty interesting.
Yep, I'm in.
Cool. You gonna get one?
Maybe.
You'll think about it.
Maybe. Don't do this to me. You know how much money I spend because of this dang podcast?
Yeah. Neat. Well, neat guns, neat story.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about the old TC single shots? Do you have one? Do you love it? Are you super stoked that they're coming back? Are you going to buy more? Are they everything that you thought they'd be cracked up to be when you got yours?
Should Mark get a suppressor?
Did you?
They can cut it out.
Everybody knows the answer to that. I know the answer to that. I responded to a guy the other day. I don't know exactly what I said. I don't recall, but it was like, good point. Correct. You got me. They're right. They're all right. Thanks everybody for listening. Tell us about your TC Encore or the one you're going to get. I should point out, I've also heard that kind of some stage 2 stuff. We'll see like the Contenders and some of the other models come, make their reappearance as well. So that's pretty cool. All right. Thanks everybody. Let us know in the comments below. We'll catch you on the next one.
See ya.
Bye.